Today there are, I don't know, probably millions of NGOs in the world. Every day you hear about the NGO to do with, children in trouble or child soldiers, or, there's a long list, single women, it's a long list. But these NGOs didn't exist 30 years ago. It's a very new phenomenon. And it's a good phenomenon, partly. And I say partly because NGOs are a little bit like characters out of Greek philosophy, out of Plato. They're a little bit created as the shadow of their enemy. So somebody rapes children, there's an NGO to stop it. Someone cuts down too many trees, there's an NGO to stop it. So the NGO tends to be a shadow of reality. And the problem with that is that it's limited by the fact that it's a shadow of the real thing. It's not the real thing. And so the more NGOs we get, the more citizen involvement through NGOs is not really citizen involvement, because it's always in reaction to power. It's not about taking power. It's not about revolution. It's not about winning. It's about preventing and slowly changing things. But it's a little bit problematic. In a way, in the last few years, you hear people talking about, the civil society and the NGO sector, and young people are engaged in NGOs. And great, it's a form of engagement. But you could also say that it's a form of passivity which looks like activity, or activity which is somehow also passive. It's very satisfying to be against, particularly if you don't have to take over. But of course, the real purpose of citizenship, the real purpose of politics, the real purpose of democracy is to take over. It's to take power and change things. And that, of course, is awful. I always say, and then I say it to you, that if you are citizens of Slovenia, you should all join a political party. You should all try to run for office. You should all try to take power. You should all ruin your lives. Because, of course, politics ruins your life. It's an awful thing to do. PEN actually is quite interesting. If you think back, before the NGOs, we invented it. In the 19th century, the first one was the Red Cross. But you see, look at the Red Cross. The Red Cross is an NGO, but it's actually about going on the ground and changing things. The big difference is that most NGOs are essentially top-down. The ideas come from the center and from the top. And then there are members in Ljubljana of an international NGO. Very enthusiastic members, but really the policies, the ideas, the direction is decided at the top, really, in all of them. Whereas in PEN, we have about 20,000 members, writers, impossible people. We're writers. We're supposed to be impossible. That's our job. And we're a bottom-up organization. We're like a political party. We're like a country. Actually, the citizens, the members of PEN, decide where PEN goes, decide what happens, decide the policies. And the problems that today, what are we dealing with today? Well, where is the most dangerous place to be a writer, to use your freedom of expression today in the world? I mean, apart from North Korea, there are no writers left, right? But in a place where there are writers, where is the most dangerous place in the world? Yes, come on. Don't be shy, it's tiring. Where do you think the most dangerous place is? Any ideas? China? Anyone else? Russia? Libya? Mexico. Mexico is the single most dangerous place in the world to be a writer. They're killing them every day. They're just killing them. Journalists, radio journalists, writers, they're just killing them. They don't even bother arresting them, putting them in prison. It's so dangerous, they just kill them. And so this week on the 8th, there's going to be the whole all the good people in Mexico are going to go into the streets. PEN is going to be at the center of it, and in a day of peace, to try and force the government to do its job. Because the government is not, it's too sophisticated to do its job, if you see my sarcasm. They're all wonderful people. They have PhDs, they went to Harvard. They're in favor of freedom of expression. Oh, they're in favor of this or in favor of that. They're not doing anything about freedom of expression. And they're not doing anything about writers being killed. And therefore, they're not doing anything about the essential part played in democracy by freedom of expression. So PEN will be in the streets in Mexico this week. At the same time, in Belarus, one of your fellow European countries, your neighbors, the president is just arresting and having anyone beaten up he wants. I think, is it 8 of our members? I think it's 8. The former president, the equivalent, you have to put this in real terms. The equivalent of this man is today on trial, having been in prison for months, having been beaten within an inch of his life. And he's on trial with 7 other leading PEN members in Belarus. Why do they arrest writers? We don't have any guns, we don't have any money, we don't even have good clothes. Why do they arrest us? Well, they arrest us because actually freedom of expression and the word is more powerful than a gun. We know it's a cliche, but you just have to remind yourself that this is not a superficial cliche. The reason they arrest writers in China, why would they bother? Oh, well, these are nothing, these writers. Why are they arresting them? Why are they keeping their wives under house arrest? Why are they treating them so badly? Because of the power of freedom of expression. Because it is the most powerful thing that you have. You as a student, your most powerful weapon in life is not money, it's not guns, it's the word. You can break a regime. You can break somebody who looks all-powerful just because you know how to use the word. So this is not like an NGO. This is really, when the writers come out and when they have the support of people, when I say the support, I don't mean behind them. When the people start using the language, this is more powerful than an army. And it makes regimes fall, as you've just seen in North Africa. With no guns, no violence, it makes regimes fall. So our week, Belarus, Mexico, I just made a statement with Mr. Jagland, the head of the Council of Europe. First time this has ever happened. The biggest European organization making a statement with PEN. Why? Well, because he's also the chair of the Nobel Peace Committee, and he understands the role of freedom of expression. In a way, we've had a very good year because, of course, our candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize, Liu Xiaobo, the Chinese writer, won the Nobel Peace Prize. And he's the founding president of the Independent Chinese PEN Center. And he's now in jail for the second time. You could say we failed because he's in jail, but he knew he would be going to jail. But we succeeded because we've shown that the word is very important and very powerful. So we've got 20,000 members. There are another maybe 20,000 writers who would like to be members, but most of them would die if they were. So they're not. But we work for them. But we're not working for the writers. We're working for language and literature and freedom of expression. And so I'll say something to you which is very simple, but which is rarely said. Does Slovenia have a Bill of Rights or Charter of Rights? Europe does. Does Slovenia? In the Constitution, or yes? So people always say, well, there's always a big section on freedom of expression. It's the most important guaranteed right. But people say, well, we're guaranteeing the right of people to write and to speak. Sure, but that's an elitist view of freedom of expression. Actually, what we're guaranteeing is the freedom of people to read and to hear. That's what most people do. And then they talk about it at home or with their friends. But very few people talk in public. Well, you have to be sort of egomaniac, a little crazy, a writer, politician, something. So these rules are not there to protect us. They're there to protect you. They're your right to hear, to read, to talk to other people in private or in public, to do what you want. Anyway, I haven't yet got to my talk. I'm just giving you some, why am I here, what do I do? So you heard a bit about me. I'm a classic kind of writer, Canadian, a country where multiculturalism, we invented it, sort of. But I've written a lot about Europe. I've lived a lot in Europe. I've lived a lot in Asia. I've written novels, but I also write mainly political philosophy, which is taught in universities, but I don't write it for universities. I write it for everybody, and which doesn't mean that I've dumbed it down. It means that I've used language as a tool, as a weapon, so that it can be read by anybody, whether they're a professor or a dean or a vice dean or a grandmother who didn't go to university. And sometimes I find that the professors have more trouble reading it than the grandmothers. Why? Because, of course, and I think that the vice deans will agree, that our education system has become more and more specialized. So people end up, the more they're educated, they end up with a kind of dialect in whatever language. And it's a dialect of specialization, and it's got a logic in it. This is how you solve problems. This is how you discuss ideas. And as you get more and more senior, the road gets narrower. And you become the greatest expert in the bottom left-hand corner of the kidney, or one of the kidneys. But you can't talk about arms, right? Or in philosophy, you're the world's greatest expert in the first 5 years of Hegel. But you can't discuss the rest of Hegel's life, let alone discuss Socrates. So what people like me do is we write about the whole thing, which is irresponsible. Completely irresponsible and fun, right? And annoying, but it's the humanist tradition, the pre-Enlightenment humanist tradition, that everything fits together and you can write and talk about everything at the same time. Very annoying to specialists. So I was asked or agreed to talk about, it's called Citizenship, Literature, and Multiculturalism. And I do this knowing that in Slovenia you don't have a lot of immigrants. I think about 8%, and it's mainly from the Balkans. And I come from a country where we take 1% of our population every year in immigrants. So we're about 35 million people, and we take about 300,000 immigrants every year. And within 5 years, 85% are citizens. So this is nowhere else in the world. United States, it's like 0.25%, and it's about 40% become citizens. And as you know, in France and Germany and England, they're having a heart attack, a nervous breakdown over about 5%, 7%. So I mean, they just cannot conceive of another way of doing society. And so in a way, what I guess I've come here to talk about is, how do you do society differently? Not in the old European model, what I would call what was called the Westphalian model. Did any of you learn that? So this is the opposite of the Westphalian model, the European Westphalian model, which is the monolithic model of the nation state. And it's really, although it's pre-19th century, its glory days are 19th century and 20th century. And it did, in some ways, wonderful things, but we must never forget that the Westphalian nation state, forget about the problems of the Balkans, right? The Westphalian nation state in the 20th century, in 2 world wars, killed 100 million of its own citizens in order to accomplish the dream of the Westphalian nation state. 100 million people killed in a European civil war in half a century. That is unprecedented in human history. No other civilization has managed to kill in a civil war 100 million people. And they did it in under 50 years. I should say you did it. And of course, Canadians took part. We came and visited and sent 1 million people in the Second World War and 500,000 in the First World War. So we took part. You could call it a civil war of Western civilization based on the Westphalian model. And after that, people said, well, maybe it doesn't work. You know, that's the reason for the European Union, is the idea that maybe it doesn't work. And now there are signs that people are slipping back into the old European Westphalian model. That's what you're hearing the last 5 years. So that's what I thought I'd talk about. And let me just start, you know, in the last, I should, just before I hold that, back to PEN, just so you understand. Once a year, PEN members meet in a Congress, very old-fashioned. Last year was Tokyo, this year it's Belgrade. Very exciting. And very exciting because it's a very important message coming out of the Balkans to the rest of the world. And so we'll get maybe 90 of our 144 PEN centers to get there from all over the world. And we do all sorts of things. They vote, they elect a president every 3 years, they elect an international secretary, a board of directors, they decide on policy, so on. It's a mini United Nations without armies and without money, but with freedom, freedom of expression. And what's so exciting about the fact that in September of this year the Congress will be in Belgrade is when the Serbian center said they wanted to hold it. It's a lot of work. We talked with them, and we talked with Slovenian and PEN and Croatian PEN and so on. And we said, this will only work at the international level if this Congress is a celebration of people living together and working together, a message of cooperation between peoples, of understanding peoples. And so this message coming out of the Balkans is a very important message for the world today. Because I know that Slovenian PEN is going to send a big delegation, Croatian PEN, Kosovo PEN, you know, Bosnian and Macedonian and Albanian, Greek. So the whole area will be there talking about the importance of people living together in whatever way, but living and talking together. Very, very important moment, if you like, in the post-Yugoslavian period, in a period when people are edging towards violence based on the Westphalian idea of race and language and nation state. So you will have an opportunity through your PEN centers to have an influence on the way the world is going mentally, how people live together. So, I'll go back to my speech. I noticed, I couldn't help notice, you must have noticed that the Chancellor of Germany a few months ago announced that multiculturalism was a failure. You saw that? And the President of France announced the same thing, and the Prime Minister of England announced more or less the same thing. And that they were rejecting multiculturalism as a failure and the reason for their problems. And my response is very simple, that I think that they would be fully within their rights to reject multiculturalism if they tried it. You didn't laugh. It's really funny. I mean, you know, the essence of politics is that you have to deal with it as dark humor. If you have no irony, if you don't think it's funny, the worse it is, the funnier it is. That's the essence of good literature, right? The more seriously you treat it, the more you give power to bad people. Because they want you to be depressed. Whereas if you're laughing, they're in trouble. They're in big trouble.